So, my friends Greg, Terry, and I were talking about this last night, and I thought, whoa, this is important. We need to talk about this. Greg had this brilliant stroke of genius here, and that happens quite a bit. Greg, thanks for welcoming us. He's on the road right now, and he's graciously decided that he would pull over and we could have this conversation to do this video. So, thank you, Greg. So, I'll turn this over to you. We're going to talking about Putin's peace plan and why he's doing what he does. And Greg has a much better insight into the Russian mind than I do. So, Greg, run with it.
Well, it's pretty interesting, and thank you for hosting this one, Prof. Um, we've been watching over the last 2 or 3 weeks a lot of rhetoric about the Alaska summit coming out of Russia.
Hmm.
And we've heard repeated rhetoric of President Putin stating that he is referring back to his June 2024 speech about what he is going to be doing. Then what happens is we start to see information coming that Russia's going to be testing a weapon. They test a weapon and they talk about how it has a nuclear engine. Then we hear the Poseidon test. Then
Hmm.
talk about the Poseidon weapon. Then the United States says, Donald Trump says, well, we need to test something. And I think it was just yesterday or within the last 36 hours, we fire off a Minuteman missile. And of course, none of this is nuclear testing. None of
Right,
it.
right, right.
None
Yeah,
of it.
so this is all pre-nuclear. This is like the delivery systems. By the way, there's a nuance to that Minuteman story. Jake
Hmm.
Rowe just posted this not too long ago. He said, "Look, I worked on these Minuteman 3, right? And this is all scheduled out years in advance. So this just happened to coincide with the time that Putin's doing this when we're doing this. But
Oh,
you wouldn't have thought so.
that's a
But
great transition because even yesterday, if you guys missed it, I know Prof covered it, I covered it. I translated the Russian Security Council meeting
mhm,
where we had different statements coming out from Gerasimov and from Belousov. So
mhm.
Gerasimov is the field general, basically, of the Russian forces, and Belousov is the defense minister. Both of them talking about we're ready to test. And Gerasimov said, listen, it takes us a couple of months to prepare this test ahead of time.
Right.
So that kind of coincides. But with all of this rhetoric, you and I were talking late last night, and today, guys, I don't mind letting you know I'm wearing my proud Ukrainian shirt, and I'm actually going to my grandmother's funeral. Our family's good. She was 91 years old, and we're long day of travel, and I just want to pay tribute to my grandmother, Ida, today on this video. She's a blessing for a lot of people. But with that said, we're talking, and I said, we're missing the big story here. And the big story is we've stopped talking about Ukraine, not we, but the world in
Yeah, yeah.
general, because everybody's now focused on Russia, the
Yeah.
United States,
And a
China.
nuclear, yeah.
Yes, all the nuclear talk, failed trips or successful trips. Just hours ago, we're learning out of Israel that they're destabilizing again, getting ready to go heavy into Lebanon. So the world kind of destabilizing. But with that,
Yeah, before you get into the
Vladimir
world
Putin,
destabilizing, before you do that,
Vladimir Putin
get
gets to wage war with no
that's right. That's right.
unfettered.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Nobody's there's 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 no talks. It was even Dmitry Peskov yesterday, multiple times coming out and saying all talks with the Trump administration are now off of the table. We have received no signals back that they want to talk. And if you remember, it was going to be next Friday. We're going to meet in Budapest, and
Yeah, yeah.
Orban's going to host it. Well, we went from that to
So
today
so let's
is
go back before you say this because
yeah.
okay, so when they started talking about the Budapest, I accidentally said Minsk last time I talked about this. Budapest, when they were talking about this, then you saw Lavrov trot out all the reasons that they couldn't do this because they don't actually want to actually come to the table and have a real peace discussion. So they were trotting out all these reasons. Oh, can't we don't want just a ceasefire. We want the whole thing, but we have to meet these underlying preconditions. And if we don't meet these, there's no sense in talking. And then Trump says he pulled the plug, but they weren't actually going to do it. So both sides are trying to make themselves look better.
It's
But it's
it's
all part of the
interesting.
same narrative. It's part of the
Both
same
sides
narrative
said
that
they
you
pulled the
pointed out.
plug. Hmm.
It's part of the same thing that you pointed out, and that is that they don't actually want to talk. So you're right, and all this nuclear stuff has just been a wild distraction, Putin's getting what he wants, which is not having to actually come to any table, and there's a meaningful delay, and they can continue to prosecute on the battlefield. Keep going.
So just like Jake Bro said, it takes months. We heard that from Russia yesterday. So all that Russia needs is for just the signal that we're going to explore nuclear testing again. It was Vladimir Putin who, at the summary of that Defense Council meeting yesterday, said, listen, I talked about this in 2023. Russia would never proactively test nuclear weapons again. But the moment
Hmm.
any nuclear nation begins to speak about this or talk about this, we will actively begin testing again. And I fully authorize the defense ministry, all the special services, all the civilian services to prepare for nuclear testing again. That does not mean they're going to test a missile tomorrow, but with that rhetoric and the same rhetoric coming out of the United States, what that means is the United States and Russia are not talking about Ukraine.
Yep.
They're only talking about each other. We are early November. The weather is now going to turn and get rough.
Okay.
And
So now with
it,
that,
the
this
power
now
grid's
with
like this,
that,
man.
hold on, with that, and with Pokrovsk, I think that okay. So our fundamental assumption here is that. Well, tell me this: is Putin getting what he actually wants here? You've been 3 decades in Russia and Ukraine, and you understand the mentality better than I do. So, if I'm understanding what you're saying, Putin is getting what he wants. They're not having to have peace talks, and like that was all intentional. So, all this nuclear kind of something is just getting him where he's trying to go, which is to not have to come to the table. Is that fair?
100%. He's not
Okay.
coming to the table.
Okay.
It will
Now,
take a
what happens after
massive
Bacross?
operation.
What happens after Bacross? Because I think it'll be a shift where now he's going to try to use that as a like, hey, look, this is inevitable. Look what I got, and use that as leverage in order to look like he's coming to the table when he's not coming to the table, and that sort of thing.
Yesterday, Vladimir Putin gave a signal through the defense meeting, and nobody really talked about this, but it is public information. Ukraine covered it heavily, but the world's not covering it. He gave to the end of February to have all of Pokrovsk and Mirnograd completely under control. So
Hmm.
that takes us through basically the entire winter season. He is focused on destroying Ukrainians' infrastructure to cripple them economically and morally in their minds.
Hmm.
And I've been in Ukraine, so many times during this war, 16 different times. And I was there on two of my runs where we were really struggling early in the war with power. And we were on 12-12 cycles, meaning we had power for 12 hours a day and no power 12 hours a day. And I lived like that for about 3 weeks.
Hmm.
And let me tell you, it will drive you insane. Your
Yeah.
apartment gets cold, then it can get warm. You can't charge, then you can charge. And that is a mental game that he's
Yeah.
playing. We're hearing today that once again, destabilization, Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. That information just coming out about an hour ago, where
Yeah.
Russia's going to blame Ukraine, Ukraine's going to blame Russia. The same stories are there, but all of this has one goal: to distract away from the front line
Yeah.
and the war and Ukraine being on the top of the news, main media or YouTube or wherever else, social media, so that he can wage war. And make no mistake about it, he wants to level Ukraine to the ground.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're talking about the 12 on 12 off, I was thinking, I saw an article that said that Ukraine has 27% insomnia rates because even when there's no bombings, you can't sleep. You're conditioned to not. So you can just imagine like the collective PTSD that the country's experiencing. Okay, let's go to Lavrov here. You were going to say,
Well, I
because,
think I think we need to discuss this.
okay.
Where is he? And right before I pulled over to record this update with you, I checked a couple of my guys in Ukraine that trust 100% with information. And they were asking the question, and then it made me think, okay, Lavrov is always at the Security Council meeting,
Mhm.
always. He was not there. And over the last week or so, he's been very quiet. So the talk right now inside Ukraine is that Putin is not satisfied with the results Lavrov is getting. Once again, this can be the same type of gameplay.
Well,
Um,
it's a little bit worse than that in open sources. So what I have been reading was that Putin's upset with Lavrov for overplaying his hand about Budapest, and so and they're getting the reaction from Trump because they're trying to stretch it out. They're not trying to get Trump to do, but I mean, it's still working in his favor. They're trying to continue to string Trump along, thinking that this is somehow something's going to happen, even if it's not. So
well, that's talking about, about international meetings there with Budapest. Okay, so that's another factor. Lavrov overplayed his hand, but the bottom line is we're just not seeing him
yeah,
on
and
the camera
he's
right now.
nowhere in the news today. I mean, or
It's
yesterday or the day before.
strategic, and Vladimir Putin signed off on who would be attending the G20, and it's not Lavrov. It's even lower level guys. Now, I won't give too much, you know, jump on that one too much because the United States also
Yeah,
not
Trump's not
sending,
going either.
nor are we sending high delegation to the G20 because the United States is saying that, South Africa shouldn't be in the G20, et cetera, et cetera. So that's another story.
Yeah.
But once again, another opportunity where maybe together. And guys, don't misunderstand. It's Ukraine's war, Ukraine fighting. They're going to fight. They're going to defend. But we have to understand that the United States and Russia, and even Zelensky says it, I need the U.S. I need the pressure from Trump. We need
Mhm.
to be able to purchase weapons. We
Yep.
need the U.S. involved.
And the weapons purchases, talk to that. They're coming.
Just coming out a few minutes ago, Ukraine reporting that Matthew Whitaker has signaled he was just with Zelensky,
Mhm.
and he has signaled that
In Kyiv. In Kyiv.
In
Yeah.
Kyiv, the United States will be selling $2 billion worth of weapons through the European Union, NATO, that are directed towards Ukraine. So
Yep.
that's good.
That's good.
But once again, it's the same story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Dig in. The war's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I think if we're just going to summarize this, Putin's getting his way by playing the game in such a way that he doesn't have to actually come to the peace table, and he's distracting or dodging or saying he's going to come and then not coming. But ultimately, it seems like he's getting what he wants, which is just to stretch this thing out because
Well,
he really thinks he's winning. Winning now, tell me what you think about this. Winning for the Russians means militarily taking the ground. Winning for Ukraine means simply keeping the Russians from obtaining their objectives while grinding them down economically through their drone strikes, missile strikes. What?
I couldn't agree more, and I would call that current day objectives.
Yeah,
Long term play. Of course, Ukraine wants their borders back, their sovereignty
certainly.
back,
But if they can
their
grind the
freedom back.
Russians
But for
down
today,
economically, they can stop them
exactly,
from. Yeah,
100%.
it's
But
very different calculus for each side.
once again, we come back into the play where Ukraine is going to need international support. Mark
Mhm.
Rutte today in Europe just a little while ago coming out and saying, listen, even when the war with Ukraine is over, we still will face a long-term existential threat from Russia that will continue on. So
Yeah.
what
And they
is
were
that?
talking about Ukraine's preparing to fight for the next 3 years. Did you see that?
Yes, Zelensky
Yeah, so
signaled that even about a week ago. I didn't cover it or talk about it,
yeah.
but yes, it. Listen, I talked 2 days ago to one of my Ukraine military buddies who's whipping. And I asked him point blank, I said, is the war over this year or early next year? He goes, are you kidding?
Mm,
No, not even close.
wow.
And the guy knows. He's been fighting for 11 years. He knows. He's
Yeah.
been fighting since 2014.
Well, I can't see any way that they can give up. I mean, there's
No.
just
So that's why
no.
we
Yep.
stand with this. I even wear this to my grandmother's funeral today. So
And
I
thank
want
you all
somebody
for
I want somebody
standing
to
with us as you're
ask.
watching this too.
Yeah.
We appreciate that. Thank you for I mean, even in the odd circumstance, Greg, where you're in the car on the way to, and I'm sorry about your grandmother.
No, thank
Um,
you.
but still being willing to take time to keep us informed. We greatly
Always.
appreciate that, and we'll see you all later.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.